Hi everyone, now have you ever been to your favourite nature hotspot and found that your video clips of nature when you got home were a little bit underwhelming and didn't quite capture the magical moments of nature whilst you were out there? Well, today I'm going to show you how to not only capture those magical moments in the way that you felt them, but also elevate your nature B-roll at the same time. And today I'm here at the London Wetlands Centre to show you how to do that. Now for these clips we won't be filming in 25 frames per second like I normally would, we're going to be framing at a higher frame rate to bring it into slow motion. So if you look to the right we've got the dial with OS, which is off speed at the top, press on that and we're actually going to film in 60 frames per second over 25 frames per second. So when we conform this within the app of Blackmagic Camera app, will be giving us the slow motion footage we want without having to do it in the editing process. Now in terms of our specs, we'll be using Apple ProRes 422 LT codec. That's because it will give us a really nice color range and deep depth of color while saving a little bit of storage compared to the HQ. And in terms of resolution, we'll be shooting in 4K. That way we'll be able to reframe in post-production and also crop in if we want to. And our color space for more dynamic range will be Apple Log. And in terms of lenses, I'll largely be sticking with the built-in lenses of the iPhone 15 Pro, which are native wide angle, 2x telephoto, 3x telephoto, and of course the ultra wide lens as well. Now let's talk establishing shots. Now this would be a really nice shot for an establishing shot. You've got a lot of the lake, the trees, the skies. So using the actual grid guide that we have here, we want to use either that top third, as I've got now, for the sky and the bottom 2/3 for the landscape, or reverse that and have one of the bottom thirds for the landscape and two for the sky. Now of course we're focusing on the landscape and nature and wilderness, so we're going to have the two bottom thirds of this grid down below and the top third on the sky. Also, as this is an establishing shot, we really want to get as much of the environment in as possible. So I'm going to switch from the native wide angle lens to the ultra wide angle lens. So we could have it focus on the grass and then coming up to the wetlands. Now, as well as having this as an establishing shot, it's at eye level at the moment, which is a little bit dull. So what we want to create is something that's much more elevated and literally elevated. So I think that hide looks like the perfect spot to get to the top of and create a nice establishing shot. Now being high up like I am here is going to give you a really nice vantage point for a beautiful selection of establishing shots. Now I wasn't quite certain which one I wanted to go with, so I got a variety here of panning side to side, panning much further from the left to the right, so we're capturing even more of these wetlands and the beauty that it captures, and even a nice still shot like this where you've got the clouds and the sky really beautifully reflected can look really nice too. I thought I'd also go for a time lapse as an option where I'm catching a frame every 10 seconds, and this looks really nice as well that we could perhaps mix in with our shots. Now the next thing I want to do is create a leading line match cut. So with this path here and many other paths around this park, I'm going to make sure that I choose different paths of different widths. So then in an edit, I'm going to bring them from a wider shot to a smaller path to a smaller path to a smaller path, and then the camera's going to shoot out into a location like a lake, one of the waterworks, that kind of thing, or even into a part of the woodland. So let's get a few leading line shots, and then we're going to turn it into a match cut in the edit. That way, rather than having a standard person walking up a pathway like this at a normal angle, we're going to get nice and low, create something really dynamic, and create something in the edit that's going to be really exciting to watch. So the next step is going to be to capture the animals in this wildlife park and the wetlands centre itself. It'd be a pretty poor nature video if we didn't, so we're now going to be looking for frogs, newts, butterflies, bees, insects, birds, anything that we can find. So really when you're getting nature B-roll, the big tip here is to just look absolutely everywhere. You never know what you're going to miss by walking past and not really paying attention. So look at every nook and cranny, and right now we're going to film as many animals as we can so we've got more of a choice in our editing. Now starting with the larger animals like these geese here, if you check out the one in the background just slightly turning to the camera, those kind of characterful moments are really what you want to bring to your nature B-roll to make it elevated. Finding eating habits like this goose here, and then finding animals that are really well camouflaged. So this frog here, you might not see it first, but as we start to push in, your audience are going to start to see it and notice it, and it's going to be a really great surprise in your nature B-roll to elevate it. Now next up, I'm going to be using a monopod to get really nice and low to the water. So we're going to be able to capture some really amazing shots that you wouldn't normally be able to catch just with your hands, and we'll be able to lean over bridges, reeds, bushes, hedges, anything that's around the water edges we can get to and get some really nice smooth shots along the water. And as this can extend all the way to that length, we should be able to capture something really special. And on top of this, I'll be using 1/2 of the B-Script Pro rig. So that my phone, which is a 15 Pro, iPhone 15 Pro, will fit nicely in these big grips and it won't fall out whilst I've got it over the water. So putting this onto a monopod like that, putting the phone inside, we're going to catch something really, really special. Now here, this really beautiful lake, there's lily pads just below me, which I'll show you now. Now I think this would be the perfect way to get a monopod down and do a nice swooping shot along the surface of these lily pads, almost as if you're like a frog making your way through the growth. Now let's have a look at this, see what we can do. Now as we move this camera across the lily pads and getting it really low to the surface of the water, you'll see that we are constantly creating a moving sense of depth. So as we move past one lily pad and another, you're seeing that depth pass the lens of the camera, and that long grass in the background and the trees creating more depth. This really is a really elevated shot that is going to make your nature stand out miles. One of the biggest tips I can give anyone for filming nature B-roll is to make sure that you use a neutral density filter, an ND filter. Right now I'm using the variable ND filter by Moment, which is absolutely superb, and I could not have made this video without it. Without an ND filter, you can't keep your shutter speed down, which means you can't use the 180-degree rule, which in turn means that you won't get nice, smooth, cinematic motion blur. And that is really key to getting elevated nature B-roll. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is to create a real sense of perspective and something that's going to really surprise the audience in this edit when we get to post-production. So there are these birds called tree creepers, which are a bit like woodpeckers, and they hop up the tree as they go up looking for insects, and they can also go back down. So I want to create in the slow motion effect a little hopping effect as it goes up the tree as if it is one of those birds. We can also do a bit of a scurry like it's a squirrel. We can corkscrew around, we can play with the focus here and get something really unique that you're not going to see in other videos and other montages of nature. So really, we can look at elevating things and making things also that are smaller look much bigger by getting lower. Then we can add that into our edit as well. Now my next tip in order to get an elevated version of your nature B-roll is to use a macro lens. Now not the built-in macro lens on your phone, because whilst it does get you closer to the detail on your ultra wide angle lens when you push it close to something, it will not capture anywhere near the detail that this 10 times macro lens by Moment will capture. Now this is the macro lens by Moment 10 times, so it'll get you 10 times closer to insects. And this is a diffusion filter which comes with it. So you literally just pop that on. And with the phone case, you've got a bayonet mount here. This is for the T series from iPhone 15 Pro. Slot that in by turning it 90 degrees on the case, and you've got yourself an amazing little macro setup. And there are a few ladybirds in here actually. So if they can come to the front or near the top of the plants, I should be able to catch something really beautiful. And there you are, that is absolutely stunning. This is the kind of detail you can capture with a 10 times lens of macro by Moment. And this works so well with flowers too. When you get slightly different colour changes within the petals, you can capture the detail. When you're going for insects that are on plants, just be aware if it's wind and there's a lot of breeze, it's going to be a bit tricky to focus, but just be patient and you'll capture something really stunning to elevate your footage. So the next shot we're going to get to elevate your nature B-roll is a frame within a frame, but using nature itself. So here we got the leaves all around the edge here. As we push in, it creates more and more of a frame, framing what's happening outside here through the deep depth of field. So we're gonna keep the depth of field the same and just shoot a few seconds, because with slow motion you only need a few seconds and it will be longer when you play it back anyway. So create a frame within nature, even when the planes are flying above. If there's one tip that I've learned from doing this for anyone who wants to create amazing elevated nature B-roll, is to be patient and give yourself the time to film elevated B-roll. Bugs, insects, animals, birds, frogs, they're not like buildings. They don't stand still for you to take a picture of in video. They're not like models or actors who will do what you want when you want them to and stay in position. So you need to have that patience to be able to say, look, this is going to be a long day, long hour, however long you give yourself to film something, but I'm here for the long haul and I'm going to wait for that moment that's absolutely magical. Now the next tip is to make sure that as much as possible you have the sunlight behind your subject. So these beautiful reeds here are going to have all of those details in the leaves shining through now as we're getting the sunlight, and it really looks absolutely spectacular. It really does look like you're walking through a jungle and you're going for somewhere completely and utterly otherworldly and really wild. So make sure you've got the sunlight behind your subject. If it's overcast like it was early on today in filming, that's not really going to be possible. But if the sun is shining, make sure you get behind subjects, start finding leaves and things like that that are a bit translucent, so you can see the sunlight pouring through it and giving you that extra detail in your shots, elevating your nature B-roll. Okay, so the next thing we want to do in our tips to elevate our footage for nature B-roll is to get just a nice still shot, a nice locked off shot. So I think it'd be really nice This is really just to make sure that you have a moment of stillness to go against all of the chaos. The following sequence you're about to watch was edited on DaVinci Resolve. I use one LUT's Arri Alexa Mimic on their LUT and colouring, which works really well, and I've used Artlist for sound effects and music for the sequence. If you want to know more about these things, then check out the links in the description below, and for the accessories I've used as well. And enjoy this sequence.